This is Dr. Kraus, and I am recording a video for white paper authors. I'm probably not going to get a chance to do this in class. I'm just trying to save a little bit of time, and not everybody needs to see this material. So that was my thinking. Yeah, I'm going to try to do this just kind of in one take. I don't want to spend a lot of time editing this video, so it's probably going to contain about the same number of kind of small, hopefully small mistakes that I'm going to make, like I would do in a real live lecture, and then I would just kind of go back and correct them. So that's going to be the plan. Here we go. So a white paper, you might be asking yourself, what is a white paper? Maybe you haven't heard that term. Maybe I'm making that term up. I don't think I am. But basically, it's a one-page summary of a project, and it's usually used to pitch that idea to someone. I think there are a few different scenarios in your career where you might have to do this. One would be pitching an idea maybe to a client, or trying to get somebody further up the management chain to give you money for an internally funded project. Or something I might have to do would be to kind of do it as a first step in applying for a government grant or something like that. Whenever you write anything, I think you should be asking yourself two questions. Why am I doing this, and who am I writing to? So you think about your audience and think about kind of your goals or whatever. And so I think for this paper, you have two audiences and two goals. Your first audience is me, and you're trying to convince me that this is a feasible project, that it's a good idea, that it's the right level of difficulty, and so on and so forth, so that I mean, there are a few projects every year that I just think are too hard or too easy, and I just kind of veto them. And so your first goal is to make sure that that doesn't happen to your project. And then your second audience is other students, the rest of the class. Basically, in order for your project to be a go, you have to convince me that it's feasible and that it's the right level of difficulty, and then you also have to convince at least three other people that they want to work on your project. And so if your project I think is feasible and is the right level of difficulty, and there are three other people besides yourself who think it's their first choice of projects to work on, then your project is definitely a go. That's kind of an ideal scenario. Obviously, they're usually slightly grayer than that when I try to evaluate the white papers. So convince your classmates that they would want to join you on this project and that it's going to be a fun and worthwhile challenge. And yeah, fun and worthwhile, maybe that's a give and take. Maybe it's really fun and sort of silly, or maybe it's really worthwhile and fun, maybe in kind of, I don't know, we're serving humanity sort of way. But either way, three other people have to want to join you on your project in order for it to be a go. So I put an example out on the course website from previous years. So this is the white papers link. So if you go to the top of the web page and go to white papers, you come here, and then if you click on this example white paper from hydraulic bicycle, then there's a PDF of, you've already seen the bicycle project's final presentation. This was the white paper that kind of kicked it off. And I think it's not a perfect example, but I think it's a pretty good example. I later had some more specific requirements in later years. This was 2 or 3 years ago. But have a look at that as just kind of an example of scope and writing style and those kind of things. But then ask yourself a couple of questions. Is it a clear statement? As you read that one page, do you get a good picture of what the project is going to entail and why you would want to work on it? And is the writing itself interesting? I mean, there's two levels. Is the project interesting to you? And that it could be a really well-written document that's kind of engaging, but the project could just be something that's kind of outside your area of interest. But is the writing interesting? And then secondly, I guess, kind of, is the project interesting? And is there all the right information and contained in that white paper so that when you get done reading it, you know what the project would be like? So kind of basically two key ideas you've got to convey as you write a white paper. One, you could have really good writing, but you could have a poor idea. So you got to have substance, you got to have a good idea to start, and then you need to be able to clearly communicate on it. You could have a fabulous idea for a project that would have a huge impact on the world or be super monumentally great in some way, but if you communicate it poorly, people are going to be like, I don't know what that's like, or I don't know exactly what we're going to do, or it just doesn't sound interesting to me. So you need to have both a good idea and you need to communicate it well. So along those lines, I think one of the very first things you need to do is make sure that your first sentence is in fact engaging, and people read that and they go, yeah, and they want to keep reading. I mean, that's one of the things that I think students sometimes don't think about when they do technical writing, is you want to have this idea that people are going to be somehow obligated by some external force to read everything that you write from first to last sentence, and they have to read all of it, and they have to read all of it in order, and you have their attention the whole time. And that's just not the case. That's not how we read other things. If I go to some news article on Google News or CNN or ESPN or whatever, I read the first couple of paragraphs, and when I decide, or even the first sentence, when I decide that I've got everything I'm going to get out of this, I go somewhere else. And so the same thing can happen in your writing here. So have an engaging first sentence that makes students want to continue, or me want to continue reading what you've written. It needs to be something that can be digested quickly, so that's why it's important to have good section headings and that kind of thing. And keep hammering on this. You need to clearly communicate your idea. You need to identify what is the actual problem that you're trying to solve, and it should really be grammatically perfect. Especially have heard stories of like CEOs or other upper level people where they basically tune out of a presentation or a document if there are grammatical errors early on. And so since it's only one page, you really ought to be able to comb through that and make your grammar completely perfect. So there are some required sections that I am insisting that you use. You need to have a problem statement, project goals. Maybe you have some initial ideas for design ideas or concepts. You don't have to have a ton of substance here, maybe, but especially if your project seems kind of ambitious, if you can show that you've already thought a little bit about how it's going to work, that might make me more likely to believe that it's feasible, and it might make other students more likely to want to join you. And then talk about what are some of the constraints that you're going to work within, or what do you think are going to be some of the big challenges you're going to have to get over for your project to be successful. And then what is the expertise that you would need people who are applying to your project to bring? If you absolutely know that you have to have welding skills and you know that you don't have them, then put that in the expertise. Or if you're looking for someone who can program a specific microcontroller or know a specific language or whatever, let people know what you need in terms of expertise in order for the project to succeed. Some formatting things. I used to make students do this as a one-page PDF, so the formatting isn't as crucial now that it's kind of a web page. But I do want to see clear section labels, and in the one page is just kind of a guideline. I don't want it to ramble on forever. I don't want it to be super short. And so I am requiring you to submit that in restructured text format, RST, which I will then convert to HTML and put on the course website. And there are examples of that on the white paper webpage. And you can go out and find more information on the internet about the format if you have specific questions that aren't answered in my examples. And maybe the primer is probably the best place to start, but then you can go to the main website if you need to. So start soon, both start thinking about the ideas soon, hopefully you're already doing that, but also start kind of working out the verbiage a little bit. And like I said, you got to have a good idea for this to work, and you need to communicate that idea clearly. Just some general tips. You absolutely have to have the right level of difficulty. Things can go badly if your project is either too hard or too easy. And I want to see clearly defined problem statement and goals. Obviously, some of that will be refined as you as a group later write your proposal. But even early on in the white paper, what are your goals and what is the problem you're trying to solve? It needs to require at least some amount of mechanical engineering. Mechanism design, who knows something about solid mechanics, something, dynamics at least, feedback controls, mechatronics I would also kind of give you a lot of leeway on. But if it doesn't involve mechanical engineering at all, then it just isn't a good fit for our department and our program. And I don't think there are any of these this time around because I'm teaching the spring fall section, but if anybody wants to work on a project for Baja or Formula Car or some other project that is recurring within the School of Engineering Solar Car, then I need you to clearly tell me what you're going to do differently that's not been done in previous years, that sort of thing. And I think all of that is self-explanatory. Okay, and I also said I would post some examples of mine, and so there are two white papers here under the My White Paper section, a two-link robot and an inverted pendulum. Both of these, so the two-link robot was actually something that was done in one of my first years here as a senior design project. It was one student, and I think it might have even been one semester, and it kind of works, but it has some issues. And so I would like it improved. redone, so to speak. You can go out and buy some of these things, but they are, $20,000 or something like that. And so if I could have a two-link robot, especially one that could be either flexible, and then if the links could swap out and be rigid, then I could use that in my coursework. Although I have a rigid one um, that we did buy for like $25,000. Um, but that would be cool for my research, and it would involve some mechatronics and some controls and that sort of thing. And then inverted pendulum, you can go out now and also buy one of these from Quanzer, um, but they're like five-ish thousand dollars, and so it's kind of a classic. I'll let you watch the videos. I don't want to have the audio going while I'm talking. Um, so I post mine here for two reasons. One, to give you examples, and so this is the restructured text necessary to the RST files for both projects in order to generate those white papers. So it just kind of gives you a fuller example of what a real document looks like. But I think they also illustrate good scope. And then, so if we don't have enough projects, people are more than welcome to apply to those two projects. Or if somebody reads those and wants to take over kind of editing them and creating, you could use that as the launching off point for your own white paper, or you can simply apply to my project. Thanks. That's all I've got for now on white papers. Feel free to ask me questions.